All right, I think everything is ready now. Tobias, good to see you.
You too.
Guys, please join me in welcoming Tobias Ahlin. Am I pronouncing your surname correctly? Ahlin, is it?
It's sort of right. It's Tobias Ahlin, which is just
What was
that's the
that?
Swedish.
Can you say again?
Tobias Ahlin.
Tobias Ahlin. All right, like
Yes.
3 out of 10 or 5.
Yeah, yeah, ish. I just go by Toby when I
Toby, all
speak
right.
English.
Okay.
It's just way easier. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So, Toby, what do you do at Minecraft?
Yes, at
Yeah,
Minecraft.
yeah.
My official title is Experience Design Director,
Uh-huh.
which sort of means basically directing the product design, so UI and UX
Mhm.
across our different games, and then of course the original game, and which means we are redesigning a lot of things,
Okay.
and so a lot of visuals, but also interactions.
Uh-huh.
So it means leading that discipline,
Uh-huh.
so working with all the designers of the company, but
Uh-huh.
also leading a project where we rebuild the infrastructure of the UI and UX, but also
Okay.
redesigning.
Interesting. So, I mean, I know very little about the gaming industry and how gaming companies work with regards to UX, but is
Mm.
it that you manage game designers, or they manage you, or you sort of, it's all chaotic and you are trying to sort of, how does it work?
Yeah. So in general, I'm not sure. I wouldn't say Minecraft works like a typical gaming company.
Okay.
So what we're looking at is also a gaming company that is starting to behave more like a service, like Spotify,
Hmm.
that lives on. Like there will never be Spotify 2.0.
Uh-huh.
Like there won't be a big release and they'll be like, here's the new Spotify.
Hmm.
It's like an iterative
Hmm.
approach
Hmm.
to a
Hmm.
service
Hmm.
that you use. So in the same way, we're not doing like a Minecraft 2.0.
Right.
We are
And
treating Minecraft like a service,
yeah, yeah.
especially the vanilla game.
Hmm.
So it's been out for almost 10 years.
Hmm. Wow.
And we've been
Really?
iterating on it, right?
Uh-huh.
It's a long time now,
Uh-huh.
and it's still one of the most popular games being played. And it's any given month, it's usually the most streamed game on YouTube of all.
Wow. Okay.
So it's still going really strong. But
Hmm.
so that said, we rather than doing it then a big release
Hmm.
like most games do.
Hmm.
So that's what they do, right? They are in production for a long while, and then
Yeah,
there's a
and
big
then bang.
release.
Hmm.
But we work more like a service. So that said, we have a few different teams that are responsible for different parts of the game. And then, so I'm embedded in one of those teams, but also direct the designers
Oh, I
in
see.
all the
In other
teams, more
teams.
as a shared discipline.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Wow. Look, I'll probably have like other, 25 questions following my first one, but I'm going to stop now, and I'll probably ask you all these questions when you come over to Product Camp. But
Yeah, yeah.
so, let's run with the thing that we are going to cover today. So that tell us one thing that you've recently discovered, that you're very enthusiastic about, and thing that you
Yeah.
like recently. Anything industry related.
Yeah. So one thing that I've been sort of under my radar for a while, but that just got released, I think, yesterday
Uh-huh.
or the day before yesterday, is a plugin for Framer. So this
Okay.
is very niched,
Uh-huh.
but it's an extension that basically enable. It's called Framer Form.
Uh-huh.
It's developed by a guy at EA Games.
Okay.
So this is sort of where the gaming industry meets the UI and design industry.
Uh-huh.
So he's developed basically a way for you or us all to play around with 3D
Uh-huh.
way easier than before inside of Framer. So
Oh,
we
I
can
see. Okay.
prototype really high def experiences.
In 3D.
And
Oh.
I'm excited about this,
Uh-huh.
especially for us, like we
Uh-huh.
can use it.
Uh-huh.
But I'm also excited of it because or about it. Uh, it's just adds another way of expressing ourselves as designers,
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
and
I've
I
never
like
heard of it.
expressive design.
Yeah, I have some tiny experience with Framer, but just without any plugins or add-ons. But that add-on
Yeah,
you're referring to is called what again?
Framer form.
Framer Form. Okay, okay.
So if
So
you Google that, there's yeah.
up until now, how have you been designing interactions for Minecraft?
Right, yeah, that's a good question. So rather than we're using no, we're not really using Framer that much. We're mostly using Origami,
Okay.
to be honest.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah. So we do high def prototypes in Origami,
Hmm.
and then if we want to do anything that will end up being 3D in the game,
Hmm.
we just do a series of renders.
Okay.
Um, so we found this really weird hack, which is that you can export through, you can do it through After Effects, but
Uh-huh.
also if you can export a transparent movie through Keynote.
All
I'm
right.
not exactly sure how the designers on my team did this, but you
Uh-huh.
can do it through Keynote.
Uh-huh.
So what we do is we pre-render it,
Uh-huh.
and then we export a movie with a transparent layer,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and then you play that, and Origami can control the movie so it looks like regular 3D,
Okay, and you can position that thing anywhere on the screen. Wow.
and control the
It's a
playback.
bit of a hack. Cool.
Yeah,
Cool. Not that I'm going to use it or anything, but cool. All
it
right.
works.
Okay, that's a nice one. What about on the flip side? One thing that you know very dispassionate about and hate even, and
Right,
industry
yeah.
related.
Uh, I'm wary to use that word. It's a very strong word, but
Could be
something that
software.
I
Could
really
be just
dislike.
you have
Yeah,
reservations towards. You know.
yeah. Um, it's maybe it plays into the recent like not really it's not really news about Facebook, but all this privacy um all these privacy concerns that have been raised again, I guess.
Hmm.
It's an ever ongoing thing. And I think it ties back to something that I catch myself doing too. It's that as soon as we only start valuing what's measurable,
Hmm.
as in we're so driven by key metrics or whatever we call them, and then we maybe launch A/B tests to like drive the metrics, we forget about our real values, as in about our moral obligations,
Mm-hmm.
and we start compromising with them because we're so focused on changing numbers.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. And I understand why this is specifically a problem to you because you guys work with Facebook, you work with authentication at least, and then I presume your data would in a way maybe leak is not a proper word, but would be then pushed to Facebook or your users' data. Or
I'm not sure actually if you can auth with Facebook. We mostly use Xbox Live as our authentication
okay,
service across different devices, but it's regardless a tendency that I think it's easy to point your finger at Facebook and say like
yeah,
they're the bad guys. I
uh-huh.
would never do that at my company, but I see myself and others do things at all to that extent, of course, because we often not even in that situation, so we could do similar things. But just forgetting like why we got into design because we get so focused on delivering results, which means in some companies, at least some big companies,
Mm,
um, changing a metric,
mm,
which
mm,
could be retention.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then, especially when you're doing that and you're doing a game, you can change that metric in so many different ways. You
mm-hmm,
could either make it even more like gambling. So I
mm,
think
mm,
you
mm,
look at like Blizzard and how they maybe are overusing loot
mm,
boxes,
mm-hmm,
and they've gotten a lot of critique from that. I think, or for that, I think it sort of ties back to the same thing. You get so focused on profit or revenue
mm,
or some key metric that you have, and then you start coming up with weird mechanics that
yeah.
if you zoom out, like obviously not why you got into gaming or design or whatever you're
Yeah,
into.
yeah, for sure, and it's a
Um,
nice one. I mean, and I mean, I guess if you're a small company and you do that sort of thing, then you could expect your users would just go away. But if you're a Facebook and if you're such a dominant player, I
yeah,
mean, we are virtually tied to Facebook, and you know the barrier to leave is a big one. Yeah, so
it's so
especially
high.
from that point of view, it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Okay, and just to close off our conversation, what is that one thing that you strongly believe in as a UX person or as a designer, but
Mm,
that one thing, that one belief, is not necessarily that obvious to your either colleagues in the team
yeah.
or other fellow designers?
Yeah. I think um, it's the notion that you can, with UX research, or user research prove or validate that your idea or design or execution is good. As
Okay.
in, that's not how it works
All
fundamentally.
right. That's a funny one.
It,
Like, why? Like, I tend to
so
disagree. Yeah.
yeah. So you can never, what the only thing that you can do to prove something is to run a scientific experiment, which usually puts you closer to a traditional A/B test.
Hmm.
And so as soon as you run, I think UX research and especially qualitative research with a
Hmm.
smaller sample,
Hmm.
it's too small to prove and
Hmm.
therefore validate anything.
Hmm.
The and so I see this happening. Like I saw this happening recently in a big design group on Facebook. Someone saying, I have finished the design now. I just have to validate it
Hmm.
with a user research session. And I
Hmm.
think that's fundamentally the wrong way to think about it. The only use, which is a great use of user research, is to prove yourself wrong, not right. So what you're looking to do is you're looking to find hypothesis
Hmm.
for what you're doing wrong with the current execution. You should never go into user research to
Wow.
create material to
Uh-huh.
prove why you're doing something in the right way.
Just because you might be lucky and you might have these 8 users who happen to agree with you, right?
Yes, or the other way around. It could easily be that you could do this, run one test with 10 people
Hmm.
and then draw some conclusions from that, run the exact same test without changing anything,
Hmm.
and surely the distribution is going to be different.
Hmm.
And so then it might change to like 80% bad or
Hmm.
80% good versus 20. But that doesn't mean, since you didn't change anything, of course, nothing has
Yeah.
changed.
Yeah.
But if you then do the same thing with changing something, you would suddenly think that because of the change, you saw a change in the
Yeah. Yeah.
data
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
got.
Yeah. So and
Yeah,
then
and then you're using it wrong. So
yeah.
what you
Yeah.
have to do is you have to just look at whatever data you got,
Uh-huh.
and you say, okay, this with this data, we can create an hypothesis for that we can change this because we did something wrong.
Hmm.
You're not out to prove that, okay, this method is the right thing. We should stop changing that.
Okay. Okay.
So
So
yeah.
making sure that I'm with you. What you're saying is that that user research is not okay for validating whether the product will pan out okay or not okay, right? But is it good for validating or testing whether something is broken?
Yes, exactly. So you can't. It's good for validating if something is not okay, as in the first
Yeah,
sentence,
yeah.
or not really validating, but creating an hypothesis
Uh-huh,
for
uh-huh,
or a theory
uh-huh,
for what's the most important thing for us to focus on to change.
uh-huh.
I think it's wrong to, for example, it's different depending on what company you are in. I think how some use research. Some use it to educate. Some use it, for example, to show a customer, if you have a client, like, look how badly your product
Yeah, yeah,
works.
yeah,
We need to work on it.
yeah.
That's a way to use it.
Uh-huh.
That's sort of different from this discussion.
Mm-hmm,
But then there's some who, when they have a client
mm-hmm,
and they have made a redesign,
mm-hmm,
um, use user research to, for example, prove that it's better or
mm-hmm,
prove that it works.
mm-hmm,
And then we're in this field again of trying to validate that something is correct,
mm-hmm.
which I think is the wrong use of user research. We're we're using it, we should use it to internally in a team try to find what is not working
Mm.
and then iterate on that. So
Okay.
it's not
Or
a
get
tool to
insights. Yeah.
validate. Yeah, it's a tool to find hypothesis for what's not working.
Okay. So if you were to find a tool that will tell you with a good degree of certainty whether something will work or whether whatever we have is good, as you said, a scientific experiment, which is, I suppose, a more statistically valid thing, but still
Yeah.
a qualitative one.
Yes.
Um,
I would try to combine it. So you run an A/B test with a big sample,
mhm,
quantitative, and then you focus on not just one key metric, but a lot of them. and make sure that some doesn't go by. Like it's easy to, for example, prove with an A/B test that you're improving acquisition, but you can at the same time really tank your retention because you're
Yeah,
just starting
yeah,
showing
yeah,
pop-ups to everyone. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So a
Makes sense.
careful quantitative experiment combined with that just proves that it's working,
Hmm.
right? It
Hmm.
doesn't tell you why. So, but then if you combine that with a
Hmm.
qualitative
Hmm.
experiment, it can tell you, or at least you can form an hypothesis for why it's working.
Hmm.
And then you have proven that it's working, and you have an hypothesis for why it's working. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
best way to validate something.
yeah. Nice one. Are you a researcher at all?
I
You seem to know a lot about research.
I'm very interested in data, and
Cool.
and I've been teaching some data strategy at Hyper Island here in
Hmm.
Stockholm,
Okay.
so it's very close to my heart.
Cool. Cool. But and your talk at Product Camp is not research related, from what I remember, right?
No, but it definitely ties into sort of this mindset. So the talk is more on how we can use critical thinking in in a productive way in the design process.
Mhm.
And it ties into this in the same way if we compare it to, for example, I think if some think of critical thinking, they may think of like conspiracy theorists.
Mm.
Like that's not critical thinking. Conspiracy theorists, they try to prove a point without having sufficient data.
Mm.
And even though they don't have the data, they're sure they're right,
Mhm.
which sort of ties into the qualitative research thing. Like they're trying to prove a point without
Okay.
having the data,
Okay.
right? And then when we apply critical thinking, I think in a productive way in our processes, we try to only prove ourselves wrong, and we're always chasing more data.
Uh-huh.
So we don't even focus on proving ourselves right.
Uh-huh.
We're chasing constantly more data
Uh-huh.
to prove ourselves
It's
wrong.
wrong.
And there's a ton of ways we can do that.
Right. And then by
So,
excluding all those points, you are getting to something that is presumably right.
yes, or better for the moment.
Mm.
And as soon as we start thinking like that, I think it can improve how we talk internally in our teams about design, about our processes. So we're going to look at a lot of like concrete examples of how
Mhm.
to do that and
Mhm.
how we're trying to apply that at Minecraft, at how Spotify is applying that, also at an organizational level, how you can structure your teams
Mhm.
to encourage exactly this way of
Mhm.
thinking.
Mhm.
But then also some of the research, we're going to look at some research that actually they have found a causal relationship between thinking in a certain way and creating better predictions, which is really what we're trying to do with design. Like we're guessing,
Mhm.
hopefully this solution works,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is an implicit prediction that
Mhm.
we think this is better to do than this.
Yeah.
And so there's some real exciting research actually that's from a project that has been going for over 30 years
Uh-huh.
now. And so we're going to take a look at that and then see what similar things we can do at our companies. And
Okay.
then use
Oh.
Minecraft and
Tobias,
Spotify
I'm
and
going to
Netflix.
stop you right here because you're going to
Okay,
reveal
okay.
everything, and then we won't sell tickets. That wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
But no, no, no. Thanks for that intro. You have definitely opened up a couple of drawers in my head. I didn't know I even had these drawers, so that's nice. Cool. So definitely looking forward to your talk, and thanks for participating in our like and like show. And Tobias, looking forward to catching up with you in person in June in Poland.
Yes, that's going to be great.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm just going to stop this little recorder thingy. Just bear with me. Yep. Cool. Okay, Tobias. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thank you. No problem.